Well, I'm glad, this was a great morning. I'm afraid I'm going to have to run out after this because tomorrow morning we're leaving for Colorado. So I don't know why I planned a vacation in mid-June these years when it seems like every year we go later and later. So as I mentioned last night at 4 o'clock, 3:38 to be exact, and 3:48, the legislature finished up their work. So they talk about a spending spree. The last 4 days they spent actually when you add RIF, it's more like $8.3 billion. So it was kind of a whirlwind. There was a lot of back negotiations going on to close the session down. At one point, we actually thought they weren't going to get it done. But legislators have lives too, and they have vacations. So several were going to be gone. So apparently they did not have the votes until June 22nd. And then they only had them on that day. And we all know what happens if you get an agreement and you send people home for 3 weeks, then people like me start to bug them, and then the whole negotiation falls apart and you end up not having a deal anymore. And so just a real quick recap, they did finally agree on a budget number. This is about 160, we had about a $7 billion budget last year, so it's about a $168 million increase. It is not 99%, it's something like 98% of what the revenues are. So again, we are not spending all of the money that's coming in. It's very clear that they're trying to make the case that we can live on less money so we can do more tax cuts. So that has been a real battle in terms of trying to figure out how to do a budget, because you have a complete disagreement philosophically over how much money you should spend. And so that's why we have $400 or $500 million in the bank at the end of this fiscal year when it closes down June 30th, because we didn't spend all of it last year either. We also have a Medicaid deficit this year, so we needed those dollars. So they did end up appropriating money to fill that deficit. Next year, Health and Human Services is not more money than it was last year. It's less money by about $19 million. So I would guess we're going to be back next year needing to have a supplemental again. But you can see in this pie chart about 48% of the budget is a standing appropriation, which is just automatic appropriations. The legislature's budget's in that. REAP would be in that if they would just leave it alone and let it go to the full 20 million appropriation, but they don't do that. Property tax replacements. Then the other half, 50%, is made up of Medicaid and Health and Human Services programs, education, and your corrections and justice programs. So you can see where the big part of that pie comes in. Now I did, since I'm leaving tomorrow, I'm not sure that you're going to get your report before another week, the final close down, but I did update our bill tracker. So everything that was passed and all of the budgets and all the information about what's in those budgets is on that, and I'll show you where you can find that at the end here. But so if you have questions that you think of later and want to see, it should be there. Oops, I went too fast. Didn't I? Nope, I didn't. Okay. I also can't see. So I don't want to talk too much about online voter registration because Bonnie did that really well. And I have to say, Bonnie, we owe Bonnie a huge thanks. She has spent so much time. I mean, seriously, so much time. Would come to the Capitol whenever we needed her to and was on all of those calls because, as you know, when there's 10 and 12 subcommittees happening at the same time, it's hard for me to plan on a call and be on it. And so she did a tremendous amount of work. So we really thank her. Online voter registration, it did pass the Senate, so that means next year we start off fresh in the House. Bad news is it's in the kill committee. We always know there's one legislator on each committee that the committee chair will give a bill to if they don't want the bill really to run. And in this case, they did that. It's Representative Watts. So I do believe that we can do a lot of work over the summer to work to educate that subcommittee. It's in state government. Guy Vanderlinden is a very good friend of the county auditors. He's very reasonable, kind of Pella area, right, Rita? Pella-ish area. And so I do think that we have our work cut out for us this summer, but I do think that we have some opportunity to work with them. Representative Watts is out in the Adel area, and Representative Highfill happens to be my legislator, so Craig's, your other lobbyist, so we will be working him hard. And I really think actually we will make some headway with him because he's young and he's very electronic. I mean, I don't even call or email him, I just text him because that's how he likes to communicate, and he'll communicate right back. So I do think we have some opportunity with him, and then Representative Stutzman. So I do think we have some opportunity. I will update Bonnie's numbers. 27 states now have online voter registration. Just a couple weeks ago, Florida passed it. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's as extensive as what we're looking at. I didn't look at the bill, but Florida, New Mexico, and Oklahoma passed it. Sorry to sound shocked by some of that. But we had a tremendous advocate in Senator Danielson. I just cannot speak highly enough. And Rita is absolutely the best partner with the ACLU. She is incredible and always positive and really fun to work with as well. So we thank her for her partnership. You know, she just brings the ACLU resources to bear and their legal resources, because much of the online voter registration discussion this year was kind of technical legal stuff. So it was really working out details with the Secretary of State's office and with all of the partners, with the county auditors, and it was very focused on process. So really what it came down to this year was that they are moving forward with an online voter registration with the DOT system. Since we do now online renewals for driver's licenses, they added in voter registration with that process. Of course, it's linked to the ID, which, you know, was a difficult thing because people linked the two issues and we did not want to link those. But there was some discussion about they really want to see and work through the glitches of that through one campaign cycle before they kind of move out and create a parallel integrated system that'll integrate, but it'll be parallel since it won't be built on top of the DOT system. So that made sense. I mean, yeah, we don't want to rush something and have it screwed up. Nobody wants to do that. But Rita came up with the great idea that, well, let's just make the effective date like 2017 or 2018. I don't know why they didn't buy that then, because that seemed like a simple solution. But we'll go back again next year with that kind of philosophy that we do not want to rush things when it comes to voter registrations, and that we want to do it the right way. And let's find a way to do that. And we know that we'll continue to work with the Secretary of State's office. I just threw up a couple other issues just to let you know. There still is the ongoing battle about absentee ballots and the postmarks at the post office. The post office is not postmarking them, and there's no easy solution to that. There was some discussion this year about just has to be in by the end of the day on election day, or doesn't count. You know, anything you do ends up looking like you're cutting back on access. So that's not going to go away, and I think legislators are going to be looking at what postal office procedures are, because it's not getting better, and auditors are feeling nervous about not knowing what to do with those. In addition, the Secretary of State's office actually worked on the Safe at Home Act, which is to give victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, or other forms of crimes that would like to have their addresses confidential, ongoing voter absentee ballot voter designation. So they would have an ongoing absentee ballot. They would have a false address in the voter registration system so that they can continue to vote and exercise their rights and not worry about the person that they're fearing coming at them. I can't remember how many states, like 30 states have something like this. So the Secretary of State's office actually came up with this, and it was signed into law. So that will be going into effect in the next couple of years. Water quality. This was what Craig and I worked on nonstop this week, because I'm going to tell you, REAP is under attack by the Farm Bureau. It's under attack in a very serious way, and they linked it with the water quality. They feel that REAP is being used to buy up farmland and turn it out of production. And they use a percent of 28% because open spaces account, which is used for purchasing lands, among other things, is 28% of the REAP pot. But when you look at how much actually goes to the purchase of lands, and it's always voluntary, and the land still pays property taxes, and it's usually somebody has some farmland that they want to preserve and not have developed, and they work with a group like the Natural Heritage Foundation or somebody else to put that into a conservation preserve. They have to pay fair market value. When you look at that, it's less than 1% that's actually used for land purchases. But it was a battle because it didn't matter, that's the number they were using, 28%. And it was really hard. I know some of you, I got emails from some of you that got that right back at you when you emailed your legislators. So it's a real battle, and it's going to be a battle next year. It's going to be a big battle next year. REAP barely made it out with $16 million status quo funding. Barely. It was down to 12 as of Tuesday. Senator Mary Jo Wilhelm would not compromise on that. She's from up in the northeast part of the state and is very, she sees both sides of the issue, but very committed to REAP. In the end, Senator Matt McCoy, who is a league member here in Des Moines, I think he is, he actually ended up saving the whole thing by finding some money for additional money for water quality, which is what the Farm Bureau wanted, was more dollars going into that nutrient reduction strategy and water quality projects. So it was a big boost this year. We have $9.6 million for water quality, which is about a $5.2 million increase. So when we first started this program back in 2013, it was at 10 million. So we're almost back up. But last year we only have 4.4 million to work with. So it's a big boost in funding for water quality initiatives right now. As of this year, there are 13 projects being funded by the program. So you can see there'll be several more that get approved. There also is a new $1.2 million appropriation. I don't know, it's money that had been going to the Department of Public Health through the Groundwater Protection Act, but I don't know what they were using it for. So they pulled it back into the Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. And it's a 3-year pilot project to collect in-field practice data to track progress of reducing nutrients in watersheds in Iowa from non-point sources as identified in the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. And then they're going to develop a database of in-field agricultural practices and analyze the impact of those practices in aggregate. That means it's confidential. That's one of those things we can't win on the what information becomes open and what becomes confidential. So that was a fight we had last year. One last thing, the Iowa Water and Land Legacy groups are still trying to find that raise the 3/8 cent sales tax to dedicate it to all of the outdoor recreation, water quality, REAP-like things. And that is being discussed. There are 2 bills, neither are perfect, and Representative Sands, who's on the House Ways and Means chair from Muscatine, dropped his bill yesterday afternoon at 2. So that House study bill you see up there, 256, came out yesterday at 2 o'clock. So obviously we weren't going to get it done, but he wanted to have something out there to discuss. He has combined it with his thoughts on a flat tax. I haven't actually read it, Craig did, but he wants to try to do an offset, which I think is the only way you'll get that to pass, another tax increase to pass. Part of the anger this session has been over the gas tax. There were just bad feelings that happened early on that they did not get over at all toward the end. And then you throw in all the other fun stuff that we got to deal with this year, the school start date, which was crazy that it was so controversial, Medicaid managed care, mental health closures, school funding, fireworks, bullying, guns, abortion, always reproductive rights, and it got to be a contentious session. So I don't know if there's a chance that a tax increase will pass next year, but maybe. We had 2 defensive wins. They are wins. The gun rights issue. That bill was crazy big and just, it had a lot of stuff in it, but it passed the House. You'll be surprised by how much it passed the House, 75 to 24. Giving any child the ability to have a handgun. Any age. Right now it's 14. Rifles are different. I hope that's not my phone, sorry. Hunting guns, long guns, I'm learning new words. It's not a rifle, it's a long gun. Okay, so long guns you can use with, a parental supervision, but a handgun you cannot. Had lots of discussions with the NRA about this. Why would a child need a handgun? Apparently to put deer out of its misery when you kill it. I don't know, I think your dad could probably do that, but it was an interesting subcommittee process. Both sides brought in kids to speak at subcommittees. So you had a very nice young gentleman who was, I think, in 4th grade that wrote up his stuff. I saw all of it written up and testified. Then you had a very nice young woman whose father owns a gun range, and he wants her to know safety since they have guns in the house. And she was, both were extremely polite, well-behaved, and really did a nice job presenting their sides of the story. But ultimately, it also legalized silencers. I'm going to say them silencers, but I've been corrected. They're suppressors. Apparently there's a difference and a distinction, but suppressors. It would have gotten rid of the permit to acquire, and so you would only have a permit to carry, which did impact kind of some of the background checks inadvertently. And then there were some other provisions in there that making all of the list confidential, which had some mental health groups upset. I myself have a friend whose husband, she found out he had gone off of his meds and wanted to know if he was buying weapons because she was fearful for his safety. So there are legitimate reasons why somebody would want to do that, but the issue was that law enforcement wants to aggregate those into a central database, all of that information, and the gun rights groups didn't want people getting those names in bulk and using it for whatever purposes. They told me that they are often stalked and maligned, and people think badly of them because they have guns. I didn't know that. So they're somehow oppressed by that. Anyway, it didn't happen. The Senate would not run the bill as is, and I guess fortunately the NRA is completely unwilling to compromise on any single item. I mean, there was talk about changing the age of 14 to 7. Nope. They're very much entrenched in that, and they were there all at the last week here trying to get this bill passed. It was in the standings bill, so it was a live round until the end. And so I'm worried about next year because the NRA has a lot of money in their pack, and people might be willing to do something next year. So that's how we kind of had the bill we have now. The law enforcement community supported the bill too because it had some fixes they want. So that was tough. There were a few, ultrasound. You probably heard stories about the ultrasound bill that came out. This is kind of interesting. Every year, the Health and Human Services budget, we can't pass a Medicaid budget because there's the word abortion in there, and so people try to tie that up. So they knew they had to have something in there, and the House had passed a bill that got rid of the family planning waiver, which is 90% federal dollars, and instead wanted to spend $4 million on an entirely state-funded program rather than the $300,000 that they spend on the matched program. So as a compromise to keeping the family planning waiver, the Senate created some language that basically codified current practice in a medical doctor's office, that you will do an ultrasound before you perform an abortion, and that you give the woman the right to see that if they want, and that you just advise them of what other options they have, including adoption. So that's actually a codification of current practice. As the family planning groups told me, you have to do an ultrasound to know there's a baby in there. So, I mean, it doesn't say transvaginal. So it was kind of interesting that all the other side came out saying that this is the best victory they've seen in years, because I'm thinking it doesn't do anything, but that's, the media might catch on to that sometime soon, that it really doesn't do anything other than codify the current practice, which you don't usually like to codify medical practices, because who knows if ultrasounds will be, you know, around. I think I'll just skip over this last one since we're running a little short on time, and just remind you, if you go to ialobby.com, up in the corner of that, there is a bill tracker spot. That's where you can find all of the bills that we've tracked for the league. I'm going to see if I can just pull it up really quickly here. But and there is a link to this if you click on the lobbyists on the league website. There is a, but you just go to the league here. Probably too many steps. I'll send out a link, but and it'll show all of the bills that we've tracked, and you can check on the details of the bill or see it. You can download it into an Excel spreadsheet if you want to. You can also look up here where it says active. You can change it to inactive, and it'll show you the ones that didn't make it. And we'll update those as they're signed by the governor and vetoed by the governor. We did pass a continuing resolution so that since the 30-day veto period is July 5th, and that's 5 days after the start of the fiscal year, they did pass something that said, you know, you'll divide up, to be able to finance it in a short term. It's kind of a continuing resolution. It basically says whatever the budget was passed by the legislature, divide it up by 1/12 and give that money to agencies for the month of July to operate. So, so they have a mechanism, so if he doesn't get everything signed by July 5th, there's a bit of an opportunity. It usually takes a week just to get everything, you know, kind of in order anyway. But I think I've talked a long time, sorry. Probably right before lunch. Are there questions? Bonnie?
Will the governor veto some of that water quality money?
I don't think so, because the Farm Bureau and ag groups really like water quality. And they didn't, unlike last year when we were talking about the 25th anniversary of REAP, and we had all the REAP money in different pots where he could veto it. This year, if he vetoes the REAP funding, it goes to 20 million, not 16 million. So, and I should note, they didn't do REAP for next year, for 2017. They did it for 2016 at 16 million, but they didn't put anything in for 2017, which means right now it's set to be 20 million. They'll go back and probably cap it, but if they don't do anything, it's 20 million. So I don't think he will veto REAP, and I doubt he would veto the water quality, just because it's something that the Farm Bureau is really supportive of, and farmers are.
Edith, what is the feel of the legislature about the marijuana bill or the cannabis bill? What is the?
Yeah, well, that was an interesting thing because,
Repeat the question.
what's the feeling of the legislature about the medical cannabis marijuana bill? We have a cannabidiol law right now, which is for epilepsy, and it's a liquid. And so legislators in the Senate's very supportive, and I think a large portion of the House is too. I know, talking to my state representative, he's extremely supportive. He came over to the Senate and sat with my state senator, who was a Republican who voted for it. And they tried to expand it to all disabling medical conditions. They set up a dispensary system, which you have to do because you can't have pharmacists dispense unless the FDA moves on that. They tried to reschedule it, so if I think, well, that expedites if the FDA makes a decision. It also, I understand, frees up the University of Iowa to do more research on it, but they didn't do that. And they also tried to realign the penalties. Most interesting subcommittee I've been in, law enforcement brought in various packages of pot and put it on the table on different sizes so people could see what they were. I didn't know that was going to happen, but they showed what like a half an ounce is and an ounce and I don't know, whatever the amounts were. They were big and small. But they were basically trying to show that a very small amount and a very large amount have the same penalty. So they tried to do that, so they decriminalized what's basically a very small amount and make it a fine, and then kind of have a middle amount that would be a lesser penalty and then kind of move up that way. And that bill did not make it in the House. The House has some law enforcement types that are are having a really hard time with that. Representative Bodler actually told me, I told him, this is a slippery slope. I'll vote for it once, but I don't want to come back next year and do it. And here we are coming back next year. So I think it's not a Republican and Democratic issue at all. Not at all. Because it's just a matter of, I think, where you come from in your own mentality, your state, who you know that has these conditions, and so.
Was that the same bill that had equalizing the crack cocaine?
Yes.
Disparity, or closing?
Closing it, yeah, closing the gap. I used the wrong word, equalizing, but. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did try to close the gap on crack cocaine and powder cocaine. It included that in it as well. It also included some synthetics issues because, every time you have a new synthetic, you outlaw a synthetic drug, the manufacturers tweak the formula just a bit and it becomes something new and legal, or not illegal. So they're trying to give the Board of Pharmacy a little bit more latitude to be able to add those without legislative action. So.
What do you think about next year with that, separating it out from one from the other, or what future do you see given the House?
I do think that there's an opportunity. I just think that people don't really understand what they're doing well enough to know. They don't seem to buy the racial disparity on that. They don't seem to buy that as a reason to do it. So I've been trying to figure out what their hook is on what would make the light come on and see that this needs to happen. You talk to people and they say, well, it seems to make sense. But I think that everybody's so afraid of being soft on crime and that it's a tough road for them. Yes?
Got an email from one of the Lynn County delegation in the House who said that the Speaker will not bring the medical cannabis bill forward even for debate.
That's probably true. I mean, I know that there are members in that caucus that really want it, and they're pushing hard, but if you know the Speaker of the House, he's a very strong military person, and I'm not sure how that's gonna come down, but it's definitely, there's leadership issues with that, and the perception of Iowa becoming some recreational marijuana. We're not talking about recreational marijuana.
Well, thank you, Amy.